Yeah, it doesn't look normal, but that's okay. We do the Pate State Speaker Series all the time, but occasionally we will schedule some home and homes, no neutral sites here. We don't go to Germany to play games. So raise your hand when I call your name. Ty Hildebrandt, Dan Rubenstein,
Yep.
Both halves of the Solid Verbal podcast mentioned on this show many times. I used to listen to it. I still listen to it. It's way better than our show. It's my favorite college football pod. Gentlemen, how are we on the precipice of this 2025 college football season?
We're doing well, man. Thank you for the invite. Thank you for the kind words that you offered on your show. I guess a couple weeks ago, we had a lot of new people stop by. So we're thrilled to be here. We've been trying to do this for a while, so I'm glad we were finally able to get it off the ground.
Couldn't be better, by the way. I looked at the schedule for week 1, and I do it every 4 to 7 days to remind myself that I need to train for the stamina needed to ingest all of that college football. We have week 0, but a first full Saturday with college football after the darkness of the summer without it. I just don't want to get too excited at noon Eastern. I have to pace myself for 3 full days, and I'm not ready yet.
Sure. I've been, by the way, in a knockdown, drag-out internet fight over the concept of week 0. You know, you do your countdown to kickoff and your countdown to the regular season. Now, it's my personal feel, and that's all it is, by the way, is a personal preference sort of feel, that the season kicks off in week 1.
Yes.
Because that's why we call it week 1. And then you fully acknowledge, yes, there are games, intriguing games in week 0, but I've been doing the countdown correlated to week 1. I think 95% of the country is in consensus agreement on that. But the thing you need to know about the 5% is they're very vocal and they all have internet and they will come after you. Where do you guys stand on week 0 versus week 1? What is the curtain lifter on the full college football season?
I think it's noon week 1. I think it's noon Eastern week 1. There is something about the span of what's going on in that moment that week 0 is great. It's a great, what is it, a snack?
Chips and salsa. That's what it is.
It's a great snack. You sit down, you have some peanuts before the menus come, whatever. It's great. We cherish it. We love having it. The first Thursday night, great, right? You come home from work, you have football. It's a uniquely special moment. It's not week 1 until Saturday.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of the internet coming at you, I said on our show that they should just move Army Navy to week 0 if they're going to be insistent on having a week 0, because that's something everybody can look forward to. And because, they're both now in the same conference, there's some weirdness potentially down the stretch if both end up playing for the conference title game. So I'm not a huge week 0 fan. Maybe I'm too old at this point. I just kind of don't remember how it came about, why it came about, why we still have it. I always tend to anchor the start of the college football season to, as you said, Dan, noon, week 1. That's sort of when everything gets started. If we're going to do week 0, let's try and spice it up a little bit. But I would say, more broadly speaking, I'm kind of a fan of the Dan Lanning plan that I think he talked about at Media Days, where if you want to use that date for college football, great, but let's just move everything up and make that the new week 1.
Yeah. All right. So confirmed. That means, according to sources, the three of us hate Kansas State, hate Iowa State, don't believe that game counts. We just confirmed.
Sure.
Right.
Of course.
When we did your version of the home and home on both of your channels, we talked about the boldest but most believable takes that we could come up with. Takatoa, Mount Takatoa is right there in the background. All right. So we filled that up. What I wanted to do is go a little bit broader. I just wanted to throw blanks out there. The stuff we're most looking forward to. I'll kick us off, the things, the all things team, if you will, that we're most looking forward to this year. Because I go to week 1 and I go to the Atlantic Coast Conference and I think about all these games, LSU at Clemson, Bama at Florida State, Georgia Tech at Colorado, Notre Dame at Miami, TCU at North Carolina. You got Tennessee, Syracuse, you got Virginia Tech, South Carolina. I think I just listed 7 games. I think there's a world where the ACC goes 2-5 or worse in that lineup, and it really comes back to bite them in the very, very uncomfortable playoff conversation, comparative conference strength of schedule type debates that it ramped up last year. It was the SMU or Alabama, SMU or South Carolina, Ole Miss, and so you had the whole, well, it's the SEC, and then other people said, yeah, but they played in their conference championship game. Well, I think that if we get there again and the ACC represented itself valiantly in week 1, okay. But there's also a world where I think they just tie a cinder block to their ankle in week 1, and someone's still going to win the conference. 2 teams may even go, 10-2 or something like that. I just don't know if you drop the ball fantastically in week 1, if you grant yourself benefit of the doubt. And then you've got the Georgia versus Georgia Techs of the world later in the year. But I think that week 1, given the perception out there, which is somewhat deserved, I think it's so imperative that they go 500 or better.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And there's never a moment, it seems, that the entire sport has the eyes on it in the same way it does for week 1. And you're building on week 1 for the rest of the month. That said, I still think there are moments in this sport where we totally forget what happened in early September. I think the wisest among us, and it's not necessarily me, the wisest among us realize that seasons are living, breathing things, especially, after Ohio State loses as early as they did to Virginia Tech, I believe, and won the very first college football playoff, that you can be forgiven for where you were in September. But with regard to conference strength conversations, it helps. It really does help to have that terrific start. Yeah, I'm not going to say that's untrue.
Here's where my head's also at. And I am not advocating for this mentality to exist. I'm just saying I think this mentality will exist. It has no business in the conversation, but I think it will exist. SMU, in my opinion, rightfully got benefit of doubt. They got into the playoff last year. I thought they belonged in the playoff. They got blown out by Penn State. I could easily see a scenario where if it's coin flip, if it's 51-49 either way, benefit of doubt goes against the ACC, because that is in recent memory in the eyes of the committee. Shouldn't be, but is. Factoring into the 2025 decision, shouldn't, but will. And if you coincide that, if you combine that with, and you guys also went like 1-6 or 2-5 when your conference, when your league had a chance to flex in week 1 and you didn't. Like, we don't have this great, robust inventory of data points, cross-conference data points. The ones we do have access to, you guys dropped the ball. So if you have another SMU Alabama caliber debate, I could see a world where it goes against the ACC for those reasons.
And by the way, that's why LSU at Clemson in week 1 is such a big game, among other reasons, right? Because Clemson obviously comes in with most returning production in the country, and LSU, we know the stakes for Brian Kelly and LSU, but that is a road game. That is that is in Clemson's Death Valley. And I think however that game kind of comes about, we'll be talking about that one for a good long time, perhaps as one of those indicators with respect to conference strength, because like it or hate it, I think, on both of our shows, we talk about the conferences the full way through, but most people tend to gravitate towards the teams at the top. And LSU is probably going to be at or near the top of the SEC at some point. Clearly, Clemson's already going to be there to start the year. Having those two teams go up against one another right out of the chute is going to be pretty interesting for that conversation moving forward.
Yeah, and Brian Kelly almost wins a lot of these openers, so you got to consider that.
Yes. That's what I was about to say. But you said it for me. All right, Rubenstein, you won the coin flip. Yes. You can go next.
What am I answering?
You just want to tell me the things.
Oh, the thing that I'm looking forward to.
Could be statements, whatever.
Okay. My next item is I can't wait to learn who is going to be a new problem. Right? I can't wait to find out the player that you watch his week 1 or week 2, be it a freshman, be it a new starter somewhere, be it an edge rusher who was hurt in 2024 and is back and we don't really fully know his name yet, or there's a new coordinator somewhere. There are candidates for this across the board, like DeCorian Moore at Oregon, right? He's somebody that gets me excited as an Oregon human. But when you watched Ryan Williams against Georgia, you're like, oh man, we got 3 years of a problem at Alabama. We were hoping he would be this, especially as young as he was/is, and Jeremiah Smith. I can't wait across this sport to find out who the new issues are going to be for coordinators. I love that moment early on in September where we're like, this guy is going to be a catastrophe for the rest of this schedule for a lot of pretty decent teams. I love that.
Is anybody that fits the answer to this question, is any one of those names one of the high-profile first-year quarterbacks?
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely think the upside of all of these first-year starting quarterbacks, right? With what Ty Simpson has in front of him as an offensive line, with who he's throwing to, with I think maybe to a lesser extent who he's handing it off to. I think that's a huge, huge problem potential for everybody in Alabama's schedule, especially getting Ryan Grubb back. Like, absolutely, like the way that a lot of these first-year starters are built around. Like, I think Notre Dame's going to have a little bit more pop on offense. I think what Dante Moore brings arm strength wise is more than what Dylan Gabriel had. We'll see what, skill position looks like around him. I think there's all the potential in the world for all of these first year guys to be like an elevated problem, because they could do something that the previous guy couldn't do consistently at a lot of these places.
I like it. I'm with you. I'm excited to see, many of these new situations, to say the least. And as we talked about when we kind of did this version over on our show, I guess the variability with respect to what could go right versus what could go wrong is part of what makes this season so fascinating. I think, at least starting in week 1.
I love, by the way, that there is, I think for most of these guys, at least a high profile game first 3 weeks of the season. I don't think that many of them we go like until October before we see them dial it up. That also means someone could fall flat on their face and then rebound in October after they've already been forgotten about. All right, Ty, next up.
I am most looking forward to seeing who becomes this year's Indiana. And this is not to say a team comes out of nowhere in the way that Indiana did and they somehow find their way into the college football playoff. But as I think we've come to know just in watching the playoff 1 year through, we're going to have a conversation at some point, latter half of October, latter half of November, where there are teams at least part of that conversation that we did not expect coming in. On a personal level, I'm very excited to see which of my predictions fall the most flat, because I've got several. I'm like all in on Pitt this year as one of those teams that like could be, don't ask me why, it's a longer conversation. But we know that there are going to be a handful of these teams that just sort of pop up out of nowhere. Maybe they're hovering around a 6.5, 7.5 win total per Vegas. And you look at the schedule, you look at what they've got coming back. I mean, we did it on our show, Dan. You're potentially very high in Mizzou because of the schedule. Like there are teams out there that I think are below like that top line in each conference that are worthy of attention, but maybe we don't fully know it yet. And we just know that by the end of September, some of those are going to begin to emerge. So that, to me, it's not just this season, but I would say just for as long as I've been a college football fan, waiting to see which teams pop like that in an unexpected way. That's one of the reasons to be excited about a new year.
I'm trying to think about who the most random team that would plausibly make sense to be in the playoff would be, that could kind of fit this. Maybe not quite. I don't know. Like some of these could shock the world. Like I'm thinking totally randomly. I'm thinking if Virginia Tech emerged,
right?
If Michigan State scaled their performance, came out of nowhere. I think Missouri is a more likely candidate. What if instead of Boise, it's Dan Mullen and UNLV the year after people kind of thought they could make the playoff, that win the Mountain West and make the playoff? Georgia Tech, you guys know I'm sky high on them. If they make the title game like I think they will, they're one win away from automatically being in. Texas Tech is a conversation piece in any Big 12 prediction, as they should be. But have people wrapped their minds around the possibility of Texas Tech actually being in the playoff? I don't know if they've gone quite that far down the bridge yet. So yeah, there's a lot.
And what about a team like a TCU?
I was about to say TCU. Ty, this is why we do this show. Yep.
TCU has a brutal schedule, but I would say reasonably, I could assume that the three of us like Josh Hoover. The problem, of course, is if you like Josh Hoover and if you believe that they can make the playoff, you got to believe a lot else in order to put them in the contender tier of the Big 12 and at least get them into this conversation as a team that could maybe make that field of 12. But the defense should be a little bit better this season, which is why I think Dan and I are, cautiously optimistic here. They're really bad against the run last year. They got to fix that. But, they got a schedule like this. You have a coach who knows how to coach offense. You have a quarterback that potentially could have gone to Tennessee if you believe Josh Hoover and what he had to say. So there's a lot to like about this TCU team. You just have to assume that so many other parts of this team are going to get better in order for them to maybe aspire to those heights.
Speaking of a portal quarterback, my next one is I can't wait to see what Carson Beck is at Miami.
Yeah.
Because he claims and they claim he's been healthy for months. I have no reason not to believe that. They lose their top half dozen pass catchers, but yet there wasn't really a lot of just sheer electricity in that room to begin with. All due respect to Xavier Restrepo, he was kind of the cornerstone of that room and either went 7th round or undrafted. He's in Nashville right now. He's with the Titans. So I think to myself, I don't just think about Carson Beck in a vacuum. I think about the quarterback position at Miami. This time last year, you got Cam Ward there, and he's going to go on to be a superstar. But Cam Ward also had several times, as it turns out, that he shows up to the building knowing, I got to score 40 if we're going to win today. Well, when you make the moves that they made at defensive coordinator, I don't know how improved they'll be this year, but they've got to be improved. So does it become somewhat of a more complimentary Miami team? Are there some hard-fought, like 23-20 type games? Can they come out on the plus side of those? Does that coaching staff improve itself in fourth quarter high-leverage positions? Because all of that dictates how we grade Carson Beck at the end of the year. I just think it is so wild that if we straw polled the college football public, there are a lot of people who would have looked you dead in the eye and said, that guy's going to be the number 1 overall quarterback taken in the draft this time last year, who this year, same human, this year, if you even said he's going to, challenge for all ACC honors, would say, oh, you're crazy, dude. Carson Beck, he's not that good. But you told me, yeah, but forget about all that. No, the world's changed now. So I think that there is a litany of example in this sport of teams that pop the year after the public expected them to pop. Maybe Miami is that this year.
Yeah, I'm super high on Miami. I really like how aggressive they were in addressing very obvious needs in the secondary, that I think even if Carson Beck is merely good but not incredible, that he's playing behind one of the better, if not best, offensive lines in the country, has a good running back room, has a promising but young receivers room. They're starting over a little bit at tight end, but it's number 1 offense in America last year. In terms of, I think, points per drive, they were the number 1 offense. And so the starting point for Carson Beck and Miami is crazy intriguing. So, yeah, I'm with you.
My zag is that Miami is an 8-4 team this year.
Okay.
I don't think they're beating Notre Dame week 1. I don't think they're beating Florida week 4. I could see them losing to Louisville. I think they're losing to Pitt to close out the year.
Man.
So, and
that's tough. That's tough because you didn't use the word guaranteed, but like 2 of the pretty solid L's that you're putting on them both happen at home, which almost happened multiple times last year, but just let's note that.
And one of those teams is on a sizable losing streak at the moment.
Yeah. No, this is all true. And I like Corey Heatherman. I agree with you, Dan. I mean, I think what they did to try and improve the defensive side of the ball, like everybody knew that they needed to get better there. And so I do think that they will, but the offense is going to be slower this year. It's probably going to look a little bit different. It might be oriented more around the run, and I like their running back room, generally speaking, but I think this might revert back to more of the Mario Cristobal man ball style football that we've seen him run in the past. And I'm still not totally convinced that they're going to get beyond some of these late game situations that have haunted them. So I like Carson Beck, veteran presence back there, but I do think the offense looks a little bit different. And I'm just not totally sold in this. See, I caught hell for this out on our YouTube channel and after we did our ACC preview from people who like Miami, and I get it, but I'm just not buying it.
I'm going to offer you one, by the way. I could give you, I'm yes-anding, but I could give you 1 through 8 in the Big 12, and you could, without any argument, have to say, all right, sure.
Yeah.
There are 435 different outcomes that are completely believable in the Big 12 this year. You could say that, Caden Salter rips it at Colorado, and they're amazing, and they end up in the Big 12 championship game. They've got a good defensive front and a good quarterback and promising receivers who are getting out of the rotation into starting roles, and they're good. You could tell me Kansas and Lance Leipold figured out with Jalen Daniels in his 14th season and be like, great, cool. Yeah, I totally believe it. The best of him is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. You could tell me anything with regard to Kansas State, TCU, West Virginia bringing in 63 new players. Like, you could tell me any outcome that this team finished in 5th, this team finished in 1st, this team finished in 11th, and I'd be like, all right, cool. And so for that reason, they are like crazy must watch every week. Can't wait.
Well, I don't know about lumping West Virginia in there, but
no, maybe not West Virginia.
West Virginia's a bridge too far, but
what I'm saying is if you put West Virginia 8th in the Big 12 when they were, thought of as to be lower and fully rebuilding, but have one of the best 3 coaches in the conference. I mean, you don't know what West Virginia is. Nobody does.
No,
because it's all new dudes wearing those uniforms.
Yeah.
So
the team you didn't mention, by the way, is Baylor.
Absolutely.
Baylor's another one that was very close, only a few opportunities or let's say missed opportunities away from getting into
tackles.
that Big 12 title game.
Could very well be my preseason conference title pick, by the way.
And there's no great argument against it.
Yeah.
I mean, they got annihilated with chunk plays on defense, and I am being cautiously optimistic with Dave Aranda, taking over and I mean, did call defense last year, but I'm optimistic that he can improve upon that this season. But provided the defense gets just marginally better and the offense stays electric as it was a year ago, this again, it's another one of those possibilities. I think you're right.
All right. I can't wait, by the way. I can't wait to see what happens with Penn State this year. The schedule is nothing.
You stole mine. You stole mine. Go ahead.
Okay. My take with Penn State in this moment is we've seen this. We've seen Penn State every year do what they do, don't do what they don't do. Like, I can't believe we're doing this again with Penn State. That I can't wait to see these games against Oregon, which we're going to be there. I can't wait to see Penn State against Ohio State in Columbus. And I kind of can't believe we get to run this narrative back with Penn State of they've got a good quarterback, they've got good coaches, they've got a good schedule, they're returning a ton. Let's see if they can win games against the best teams on their... Nope. Okay, they didn't do it again. All right. I can't believe we're so lucky as a community that we get to trot back this old story.
Let me give you more of a nuanced take, because of the 3 of us, I am the Penn State grad.
Yeah.
What makes the Penn State situation, the narrative as a whole, so interesting is because Penn State is in a situation not unlike what Ohio State was in a year ago. And that is, of course, you're looking at the national landscape. Everybody is...
Technically, Ohio State can't beat Ohio State either. So there's that.
Case in point. Yeah. But my thing here is Penn State clearly is one of the teams right now in the preseason that's all the rage. And why not? They've got so much back. You can understand, even if you're not betting on Penn State, you can understand why they are part of that conversation. So clearly that's the thing you want. But much like Ohio State a year ago, Penn State is also in the situation where the fan base as a whole is looking at one big game on the schedule. And for them, and for us, speaking as an alum, beating Ohio State is representative of the whole thing. There is this sense in the community that Penn State cannot get that monkey off its back. And
it's not just in the community, Ty. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Okay.
And so my point is just that Penn State can go on to great things. I think, the schedule is advantageous. They look like a 10-2 at worst caliber team this season. Barring any kind of total collapse or disaster, they should be in that playoff. They should have another run at this thing. I think there is a fair amount of assumption in the Penn State world that will come to fruition, and everybody's cool with that. But the indicator that this thing is for real is going to be when they play Ohio State on the road in Columbus. They don't win that game, they're still going to find their way into the playoff in all likelihood. But that is the thing that the people that I talk to in this universe are most focused on that game. They want to get that one out of the way first. So how they deal with that narrative will be really interesting to see, because this is a team that's for all intents and purposes loaded coming into the year. But just kind of coming to grips with that. If in fact they fall short against Ohio State, if in fact they fall short in any of these big games that they got on the schedule, maybe Oregon when they come to town for the whiteout, I don't expect that. But that, to me, that sort of interesting twist with the way that the fan base, I think, views the Penn State season should be fascinating to see unfold.
The psychology amongst the global college football community is such that, yeah, everything you just said, everything Dan just said, the people inside Penn State, to their credit, I guess, they're not trying to temper expectations.
No.
Like this past weekend, I talked to several people up there and they're, no, it's real, man. Like we should do it this year. It's real. And I'm like, okay. And I'm not necessarily disagreeing, but here's the add-on. So that's one layer of the cake that's been there before. The next layer of the cake is, at least perceptionally, there's not that insurmountable hurdle out there for them. In years past, there was like a superpower Georgia, right, or Alabama, where you looked and said, well, they're not going to get past them, even if they do get to whatever, fill in the blank. There is not that this year. So you're telling me you got your best shot internally. I'm telling you the landscape is totally muddy right now. And you already sort of got a taste of it last year by getting in the playoff. It's the most unique, I think, competitive job pressure in America this year, because it's not job security pressure. He's not getting fired, but it's just this kind of very, very fine window of championship. It's a championship window. And if you're not ready to do it this year, it's not the worst thing in the world to be a 10-win kind of periphery contender type, but maybe that's all you ever are if you can't get it done this year. And it all comes down to these few moments. Even in those games, it's going to come down to like some 4th and 1, whether you like fight for 6 extra inches or not. That's what your legacy is going to be determined by. And you already know that now. You just don't know the specifics of like down, distance, when, where.
I would be very curious if you polled your audience, Josh, people who care about Penn State, who are within the Penn State community. What is their view of a quote unquote successful season?
Yeah.
Is it beating an Ohio State or beating an Oregon or winning a team against a traditional Power 4 opponent in the playoff and acquitting themselves well? Or is it winning the national championship? My hunch is it's the former as opposed to the latter. And I think what we've seen elsewhere throughout the Penn State world, just with their signals of intent, with going out and paying $3.1 million to bring Jim Knowles in, they didn't necessarily need the best defensive coordinator in college football to maintain a really high standard for defense, but they're going to do it. They're going above and beyond, I think, to prove that they can do it this year because they're loaded up for this season. Even some of the renovation work they're doing on the stadium, there's just a lot of internal intent that they're trying to move this thing forward. They're trying to get over those proverbial humps. And so there's definite reason for optimism, and I understand all of it. I share most of it. But just that question of what is successful this season in the Penn State community is, I think, one of the more intriguing storylines that we're going to follow throughout the course of the year.
I'll keep it personal. I'll go Dan Lanning, villain. I'm looking forward to in 2025. So Dan Lanning at Oregon, which is already a place that's polarizing because some people love the uniforms and the style and the innovation, whatever, and some people look at it as all flash and no substance. Dan Lanning in Oregon put out the videos last year where they're showing clips of Inglourious Bastards before beating Michigan, or they're, the different themed videos, or Dan Lanning has the 12 man on the field that they have to change the rules regarding. Dan Lanning jumps in a pool with the recruit, which is seen, I think rightfully so, as kind of corny, but kind of fun if the recruit likes it. Recruit didn't stick with Oregon, to be clear. Didn't work out. He's ended up, it seems, I think, in Austin. People delighted in Oregon both beating Ohio State and then fully collapsing against Ohio State in the playoff. And I think it's crucial that this sport is clear to have people you enjoy rooting for. And maybe that's Oregon for you. It is for me. I went there. Or rooting against. And people didn't like Nick Saban because they saw like how he left the Dolphins and the NFL and what he's doing at Alabama and the sort of the gruff demeanor on the sideline. They didn't like Jim Harbaugh. I think to some extent, people feel that way against Dabo, fair or not. But I don't think they feel it about Kirby Smart. I don't think people have strong opinions about Sark across the country. But I think Dan Lanning before the Colorado game with they do it for clicks, we do it on the field. Like, I think there is a brashness to him that players respond to that has worked for that program. But I like that he is seen in sort of like a villainous way. And is he going to cut the electric grid in Iowa City this year? I don't know. Is he going to break up a marriage? I don't know. Like, what is the next step for Dan Lanning's villainous tour in 2025? Can't wait.
That's delicious.
Thank you very much.
Because you're right. There's no, I would argue there's no central voice. There's no face of college football right now. I think people have been very reluctant to accept that role since Saban. And that's both positive and negative. You don't have an ultimate heel out there, but you don't have a voice. You don't have that guy that when he speaks, everyone else shuts up. Right. I think people have been reluctant to take that. I'll go one for you here. I'm interested to see what Michigan is on multiple fronts. So I'm interested to see, whether they can go to Oklahoma and win in week 2. But there's also this other cloud that keeps hovering. And if you try and, the closer you get to football season, the more you just want to talk about football and leave all the other stuff, outside. And for a large extent, I'm happy to do that. With Michigan, we have this impending NCAA matter that looks like it's going to publicly play itself out right about the time the season's starting, thereabouts. And so I wonder, if that goes against them, if it really, severely goes against them publicly, you got coaches that have to serve added suspensions, or there's show cause, or they have punitive measures taken against them. I'm skeptical that that'll happen, but I could be wrong. If all that plays out as the backdrop of them going 7-5, what's the conversation around Sharon Moore? You're 2 years removed from Jim Harbaugh. Perceptionally, he left you a pretty full cupboard, not of the roster per se, but the organization was in a good spot, but now that's evaporated. And we were winning games and playing for titles. Now that's evaporated. There really are no proven commodities here that we can fall back on and say, well, historically, this guy's gotten the job done. You don't really have that anymore. And what if also your rival just won a national championship, which, oh, by the way, they did, but you've got that one thing to hold over them, which is we've got 4 straight wins over you. But what if they come into your building at the end of the year and that gets erased too? It can really get uncomfortable and weird and sideways for Michigan this year in a hurry.
By the way, that week's game, the Ohio State-Michigan game, the game, and it's like the narrative game of the conference portion of the season, I think. That game is going to end in a 7-6 Michigan win or an 80-13 Ohio State win. Nothing in between. Absolutely zero in between. Either Ryan Day is exercising everything, or Michigan is going to find a way to become the most hateful boa constrictor the modern sport has ever seen. That's my opinion.
Man, I mean, realistically, Josh, what do you expect on the NCAA side? Because I'm with you. I think I'm skeptical that there's going to be a whole lot more thrown at them. I do think there's probably some inclination from the NCAA to flex its muscles a little bit to prove that it still has some clout in the sport, which has been dwindling sometimes by its own decision. But what is a realistic expectation for that in your view?
I don't think that there is any punitive action taken against them that would impact the viability of Michigan moving forward. By that, I mean, there's nothing that's going to happen to them that makes you less likely to want to watch a Michigan football game. So if you want to find them, which I believe they'll do, okay. Show causes for coaches, I believe that's very much on the table. But really, when it comes to NCAA investigations, all the normal fan wants to know is, are you going to have a bowl ban, or are you going to have scholarship restrictions? I don't even know that scholarship restrictions happen anymore, or if they matter. I don't think that postseason ban's on the table at all. And this is a fundamental disagreement I have with large swaths of the Ohio State fan base. I almost remove what I think should happen, like what I think is just and right ethically. We left that outside looking in a long time ago. I think we have to understand what the NCAA is. The NCAA is something that exists as an enforcement arm to serve at the behest of university presidents. The same university presidents are the ones who collectively sign their name on multi-billion-dollar media rights deals. So I just have to ask myself, not getting conspiratorial at all, just common sense tells me there's no way networks enter into multi-billion-dollar agreements with university presidents and leagues who have an enforcement arm that attaches to them and are about to sit and watch those presidents allow their enforcement arm to take measures against one of their most prized assets that fundamentally deteriorates the viability and viewability of that asset. That's not the way this works anymore, whether it should or not. I don't think that's the way this works anymore. So whatever a slap on the wrist is, however many millions of dollars that is, I think that's the modern day version of the NCAA swinging the hammer. So I don't think when that thing comes down, it's going to be like the train's completely off the tracks. What are we going to do? Like it would have been 25 years ago if you had multiple level 1 violations. Having said that, there are a lot of people who strongly disagree with that. I don't know that anyone knows anything, but there are people who pretty strongly disagree with that. I'd have to see it to believe it.
I don't think it's going to happen. I agree with you, and not to get conspiratorial, but
and there have been coaching suspensions for major games.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think something will be levied upon Michigan. I don't think, to your point, Josh, it's going to be anything that truly impacts what we see out there this year. And
I think something heavy would have to be drawn out from a crazy bit of new evidence that Michigan had every single one of Ohio State's practices in 4K on their servers, right? It was something on that level. You're like, well, I guess they got to hit them now. But beyond that, yeah, I think you're right.
I've got one.
I would love to know in media rights deals, and I don't know this. I would love to know, is there language that almost, like when I was working in local TV, we didn't have a backup generator at my station, which is just an insane existence when you're the affiliate for NBC and you're running playoff games for the NFL, to know that if your power goes out, you have to return deliverable ad revenue to local advertisers because their ads didn't run. Is there something similar baked into the language and legalese of media rights deals where we're paying? I mean, in the Big Ten, you're paying for about 4 teams and you're taking the other however many. If one of those 4, by your own enforcement body's machinations, suffers and is not as visible and is not as worthy to be put on national airwaves, do we get some of our money back? I would love to know if that exists.
Yeah, and it's, again, to your point, it's an interesting conversation of what should happen versus what realistically should happen given the circumstances and kind of all these entanglements. It's fascinating.
Multiple level 1 violations should be a multi-year postseason ban in a former life.
Right.
We just don't live in that life anymore.
Yeah, we also kind of live in a reality in which the Big Ten and Michigan, if they're handed down something severe, might just say, we disagree. Nope. Nope.
Yeah. We're going to show up anyway. Feel free to.
We're going to be wearing our maize and blue. You know where to find us. We're going to be there.
It's like when George Costanza got fired and just showed up anyway.
Showed up. Yeah, absolutely.
I've got a good one here.
Okay.
And maybe I'm the only one who's looking forward to this. I don't know. But the overwhelming majority of college football fans aren't talking about the 7 teams in major college football that have 35 or more incoming transfers.
Oh, talk about that.
Okay. Purdue, West Virginia, North Carolina, Oklahoma State, UCF, Cal, and Wake Forest. At least per 24/7.
Yeah.
Those are the schools that have the most transfers this cycle.
Ty, do you know what Purdue's number is?
The total number is 54, and they've got 69 new players in total if you include their high school transfers, which is the most in college football.
The other day, I talked to Barry Odom about this. He said, I had 38 players in my first team meeting in December. I will have 82 of 105 as new players, either incoming freshmen or transfers. 82 of his 105 are new players this year that were not there a calendar year ago.
It's crazy. And so the reason that I bring this up, obviously, this is sort of like the new world order of college football. Everybody's taking a ton of transfers. One of these teams is going to punch way above preseason expectations. Most of these schools that I listed out, maybe with the exception of North Carolina, and I guess it depends how you feel about Oklahoma State. But most of these schools, I think, are projected at or near the bottom of their respective conferences. But without fail, one of them will exceed expectations, and no one will have seen it coming. Because how could you? There's no way to project when you're dealing with that many new. We can't even agree on how many new players Purdue has, Josh, right? So whenever you've got this incredible number of new people coming in, it is an Indiana situation where it is like Purdue in name only, UCF in name only. It's an entirely new cast of characters, despite the fact that they're wearing the same uniform. I'm just really curious to see who that's going to be. I guess the easy answer would be to say North Carolina, because there is a lot working in their favor. And I think they got something like 7 4-star transfers, something like that. I mean, clearly Bill Belichick's got a name that people are interested in. But, I mean, would it surprise you at all 6 months down the line to be like, Cal actually was kind of interesting this past year in a way that we didn't expect? Or Wake Forest. Jake Dickert was a GA once east of the Mississippi. Now he comes to Wake Forest, a beautiful place, a beautiful campus, and suddenly he kind of makes it interesting in a way that we didn't see coming. One of these 7 teams is going to be there at the very end of this thing, and we're going to have that conversation. And I don't know who it's going to be, but I also don't know how to handicap any of those schools that I just mentioned. So it's going to be fascinating.
Was Southern Miss on that list?
Southern Miss is not on this list per se, but Southern Miss is basically playing with the Marshall Championship team from a year ago because of Charles Huff and that whole situation with him coming down to take over at Southern Miss. So that's another school where, though they might not be on like the top national line with respect to conversation, if you're looking at Southern Miss this year and you're wondering, is this a team that could contend for a conference title? It's a big old shrug. We have no idea what to expect from them either.
I picture people picking up the local like Hattiesburg newspaper, a la the opening scenes in Major League.
Who are these effing guys? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Guys.
It's crazy.
So funny. Yeah. I mean, they're all getting to know each other as we speak, right? 80 new guys in West Lafayette. That's not that's a basketball tournament. That's 16 starting fives playing for Purdue this year.
By the way, check that.
Yeah.
I only had this filtered based on power conferences.
Yeah.
Southern Miss does have 54 incoming transfers, so that's my bad. I need to learn how to work the internet here. But yeah, they're another one that we could include them as the 8th team as part of this conversation. Like a full-on hockey line change. Who the hell knows?
Sidebar with regard to North Carolina bringing in, we have not mentioned Bill Belichick specifically yet. I have no idea what UNC is going to do this season. I don't know what they're going to look like. I don't know what their systems are going to be exactly. I don't know who is going to shine, who is not going to shine. Of this, I am sure. There's going to be a moment, likely in September, likely early on in September, where there's going to be a close-up of Bill Belichick's face in beautiful 4K, where you are going to be able to read his face precisely. And the words that you're going to be able to read on his face are, I think I'm working with children.
Yes.
I think I might be working, and I'm not going to make the easy joke here. I think I might be working with adolescents who are making mistakes because they took the SATs an hour and a half ago. They've been driving for 10 months, whatever. And I can't wait for that realization to creep across his face like a storm.
Like, I mean, when do you think it happens that they lose a game and he just goes scorched earth in the locker room and tells them what they're about to be put through the next week, and somebody just leans in his ear and says, "We only got 20 hours a week."
Got him like an hour and a half. We need to get them new wristbands. We don't have time. Yeah, it's inevitable. Again, they could go 10-2. They could go 4-8. I don't know what they're going to do, but that look is going to 100% happen.
I think the other thing that I am most interested in this year, and on our show, we talk a lot about just we tend to focus on things that we just think everybody would find interesting, that we at least find interesting. Oklahoma to me is like, for my money, the most interesting story in college football. And there are a great number of them that I could pull out and I say, I like this about this team, and I think this is interesting about another. But Oklahoma now going out and getting John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle, playing the schedule that they have to play, coming off the season that they came off of. There's so many variables at play with this team. There's a lot new. The schedule is just murder. This is another one of these schools. They're not necessarily taking 54 transfers, but you could convince me almost anything of Oklahoma. You can convince me of 10-2 the same way you could convince me of 6-6. I don't know what to expect. I can't assume that John Mateer is just going to hit, even though he's an exciting prospect. There's a lot of, it's playing an SEC schedule. So there is so much new there.
I'm glad you didn't make the wheels coming off joke with Oklahoma. Too obvious, and you were a classy guy for doing that, Ty. Continue.
I'm just damn curious about Oklahoma, and I don't, we could sit here and talk through two deeps and schedules and all that, but the truth is, with so much new, we're not going to know until the rubber meets the road.
I've got them as a top 10 caliber team, but not factoring in schedule. When you factor in schedule, it's a whole new ball game. I don't think they were. I think they had a fatal flaw last year. I don't think of them as a fatally flawed team. And if I conservatively think they're going to get top 20 defense this year, which I do, maybe better than that, then, man, I really think that this entire concept of bringing an entire offensive combination in an OC quarterback doesn't happen all that often. I'm very, very high on them. I could easily see them in SEC championship contention in late November. But you're right. Anytime you play the strength of schedule they do, there's also the cliff dive mode that could be applied to
Yeah, and you're right to point out that when you get the quarterback offensive coordinator combo, it always makes it just a little bit more interesting. Like we saw them do it a couple years back at Western Kentucky, right? With like the Zach Kitley and Bailey Zappi. That worked famously well. Now we've got one here with Oklahoma. They're trying Ben Arbuckle. They're trying John Mateer. Western Kentucky, by the way, trying it again this year with Houston Baptist, right? Yeah. So it's I guess Abilene Christian this year, whichever one it is. There are a couple schools that I think are interested in that sort of combo play. Maybe it can get the offense up and running a little bit quicker. I guess we're going to see it at Utah is another example this season.
Yeah, New Mexico, yeah.
So there are some interesting spins on this whole transfer portal thing where it's not just the player, but also the coaches. And if that's able to supercharge this offense in a quick way, they're going to need it.
Deion Shador, by the way. Yeah.
Deion Shador, right? I mean, we've seen it on occasion. If Oklahoma is able to supercharge that offense in a quick way, which I think they need to do in order to get off the mat here in the SEC, it would be, I mean, it already is one of the more interesting conversations in the country, but it would make it all the more interesting if Oklahoma comes out and they just sort of hit the ground running.
All right. I asked for 45. We've gone over 45. So I'll wrap us up here with one more. It's very, very broad. We could actually go 45 minutes just on this one, but there is this huge chunk of the SEC that, by my observation and estimation, thinks that last year was an appetizer to this year's main course. And last year may have been 10 wins if you're Georgia and an SEC championship. Last year could have been 7-5 and you're Auburn, but either of those, think about this year as we're going to level up this year, respectively. Okay, I've got Florida in this bucket. I've got Georgia in this bucket. I've got LSU in this bucket. I've got South Carolina in this bucket. I've got Texas A&M in this bucket. I've got Alabama in this bucket. I've got Auburn, if I didn't mention them already. I am going about half of the conference that thinks to themselves, because Texas thinks that as well, by the way. So I have got half the conference that realistically thinks last year was okay because of what this year will be. And the simple math and logic dictates you don't have enough wins to go around. Many of you are going to play each other. You don't have enough wins to go around. My point is, I think for one or a couple of those teams, there is a 7-5 incoming.
Oh, yeah.
And I do not think, like I said when we were recording on your guys' channel, I don't think we've recalibrated our mentality nationally, but especially in the SEC, to account for the changes in the sport and to account for the fact that 7-5 may be the new 9-3, especially if it's a bunch of close losses. 7-5 could be the new 9-3 because we absolutely know 10-2 is the new 11-1. So I think somebody in that group is going to have some really stupid conversation around the head coach in December, around the changes that need to be made. And really all that will have happened is they had some tough injury luck and they lost some hard fought games, but they were probably every bit the caliber that one of their 9-3 counterparts were.
Counterpoint. We saw how Auburn lost some of those games last year. You can't go 7-5 in that exact same manner, right? You can't. There has to be some sort of like, okay, yes, we went 7-5, but look, there were 50-50 games and we beat X, Y, and Z, and they were ranked in the top 10. Sure, I grant you that. But I think manner does apply here, where some of these teams lost games or even won games, the way Florida beat Ole Miss, where you're just like, ooh, I don't know if we can count on Jackson Dart-ish interceptions plural in the last few minutes. Like that's the only caveat is you have to be putting forth, a pretty sincere performance in order to justify it. But you're right that there's just like somebody's going to be legitimately good and go 7-5 or 8-4 if something breaks their way. I happen to think Mike Elko is who Matt Rule fancies himself to be in 2025. That's my take. That I think Texas A&M is quietly super interesting this year. But all of those teams you listed, by the way, you could say wild card quarterback, wild card quarterback, wild card quarterback, wild card quarterback, or like DJ Lagway injured. We think he's great, but still young, kind of wild card. Like, I love that about all those teams you listed.
Yeah, and I'll leave you with this too, and it's sort of a semi-related point here when we're talking through, 7-5 being the new 9-3. There are a lot of teams at the top of that conversation that have brutal schedules. There are also a couple that we think could be pretty good relative to the field that have easier schedules. I'm looking at Ole Miss as an example of that. I happen to think Ole Miss will still be pretty good. I don't know if they're going to be at the top of the conference, but could there be a situation, especially in this new world now where there's no divisions, there are more teams in all of these conferences, where at the end of the year in the SEC season, we're looking at teams that are higher up in the standings, but in effect, they're arguing amongst one another because one schedule is significantly easier than the team below them in the standings.
Sure.
I think there's real possibility for that this year. Again, we'll see. There is a lot of wild card potential with a lot of the quarterbacks, I think, on display in this conference, but it's like we've evolved to this point now with major college football because the conferences are so big that there is just this raging conversation within each conference. It's sort of like its own counterculture, which is pretty cool.
It has been a pleasure for us to welcome the Solid Verbal into Pate State here, the back half of a home and home. Whichever one of you has elected to be the spokesperson, tell the masses where they can reach you.
You can go to solidverbal.com. You can search for the Solid Verbal wherever you get your college football podcasts, the same way you listen or watch Josh. You can find us if you know how to work the internets. We are grateful to be here with you, my good friend. I know we've wanted to do this for a while. I'm glad we were finally able to make it happen. So we'll have to make sure we keep in touch and do it again.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.